Good evening, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and tonight we have our second interview with Garland Nixon. I'm so glad to welcome him to the show. Before I do, I do want to get a word out to all of my subscribers and members over at YouTube, here at YouTube, to say, yeah, it's true, they have demonetized my channel. The explanation was pretty vague, something about controversial speech that was harmful, but who can say what's harmful? Anyway, I won't get into it. Just to say, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being members. And what we're going to do, Andy and I are going to work with moving the tiers over either directly to the Screaming Ospreys or to the Patreon channel that I have open as a backup. So we're going to keep going, of course. We're not stopping. The content will still be here on YouTube as long as we're allowed to present it. And with that word, let me say welcome to Garland Nixon. Hi, Garland.
Hey there, John. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, man, I'm so glad you're back. We had such an exciting conversation, and we have so much in common. I'm looking forward to getting into some more stuff. Last time we were together was the 14th of January, so it's been 2.5 weeks now. A lot has happened. It looks like the Capitol lockdown has gotten even more militarized, and the fence has grown, and it's more troops arriving. It's kind of a creepy situation for those of us that have grown up and lived our lives around here. What are you hearing from people, and how do you feel about the military zone here around our capital?
Well, I personally, when I look at the military zone now, I feel like it is a means to an end. I feel like, let's face it, they know good and well that there's not a group of people in red hats waiting to, invade the Capitol, and they're not going to be overrun by Trump supporters by any stretch of the imagination. But they have some draconian legislation that they're planning on pushing through. I think they recognize that due to any number of you've got the economic plight as a result of the COVID and the lockdown, all these other things. They know that people are suffering. They know that people are angry, and they want to be able to tamp down that dissent. And so they've got this the domestic terrorism legislation that they're about to push through. And, heavy censorship coming on social media. And I think they want to be prepared to either, head off the protests before they get started, or to crack down on them really hard after they get started. And I think this is to justify that legislation, to say we've got domestic terrorism legislation and you've got to pass it. I mean, just look out. I mean, think about the people in Congress, and they're coming in, they're going to say, look outside, you're walking, you have to walk through soldiers to protect you. You have to walk by these Humvees. Look how scary it is. You've got to vote for this legislation. And then people will see it on television. Oh my gosh, look at that. Soldiers everywhere. We must all be afraid. And they can convince us once again, like they did in 9/11 with the Patriot Act, they can convince the people to support legislation that's not in their best interest, and that allows them to keep us at bay, to keep the littles down when we start complaining about the oppression that we're clearly facing.
Wow. Well, you didn't make me feel any better, because that's the same thing I'm afraid of, is that this is a sign of the beginning of the totalitarian nightmare. How can we communicate with people that are not already of our opinion on this? There's a big problem that we have from the election, is that there's still this hangover that everyone has that wants to blame everything on Donald Trump. And that's going to be the song that Congress is going to sing for the next couple of weeks. This impeachment trial is going to happen, and it's going to cover up all the news. Meanwhile, the people that are really doing this are the people that are in charge of Congress now, and President Biden with his executive orders, which I don't even know what they all say, but it's, as you indicated, it's not good. And for them to have military defenses set up around the Capitol looks like a third world country, Garland.
Yeah, and that's the intent. They want it to look scary. They want it to look frightening. They want people to be afraid and to feel like, hey, these people, I mean, the stuff they're saying, oh, our democracy was threatened on January 6th and et cetera. Well, that's foolishness. No democracy was threatened on January 6th. It was an unfortunate incident. When I look at what happened on January 6th, I say, there were a number of things that shouldn't have happened. Certainly, they did not have the security that they needed there. And I mean, literally, I watched it, and they literally like opened the doors and let the people walk in. It was a bad situation, but the democracy wasn't threatened. But it is very, very convenient for them. The thing about it is, I've had people say, "Well, I think it was staged," and I said, "Here's the way I look at it: the people who are in charge are very good at taking advantage of opportunities. So every time they see something, no matter how horrible it is for the masses, they see that as an opportunity." And let me give you an example of this sociopathic view of the world that says, how can I take advantage of opportunities so I can exercise more power? During this pandemic, Iran as an example, Venezuela, some of the other countries, right, who are having very difficult times. They had a lot of people sick. They had a lot of financial problems, etc. The neighborly thing to do would be to say, okay, you guys got to deal with this. We'll back off. The U.S. cranked down on the sanctions to make their lives even worse. They looked for an opportunity, and like a sociopath does. What is a sociopath? How does a sociopath view the world? If they see somebody walking down the street and it's a little old lady, what they say is, wow, I can push her down and take her wallet, and there's nothing she can do to stop me. A sociopath looks for weakness and takes advantage of that weakness with no conscience. And I think that's the way our government is. They looked at Iran and they're like, hey, we can get that oil. And right now they're sick. Let's take advantage of that. Well, they look at us the same way. A sociopath looks at everybody the same way. And they're like, okay, if we can keep these people good and scared, we can pass this legislation. And then once they really realize we're screwing them, and they start rising up, yeah, we can easily put that down. And keep in mind the way they want to put it down. If you look at this legislation, I guarantee this will be in it. People who organize protests, that's who they'll be able to throw the book at. So they can stop people from organizing protests. They can go after people who would organize a protest. If you even talk about a protest, they can throw you off social media. I bet you that's going to be a part of it. They're going to use these domestic terrorism laws to attack people online, to censor people online, and maybe even to charge people online. I mean, if you organize a protest, or if you're on YouTube and you're saying people should come together, people should go protest at the Capitol, and a bunch of people go protest there, and one person gets hurt, they'll say, well, there we go. Under domestic terrorism laws, you incited a protest, somebody got hurt. I guess we're going to have to charge you with a felony and give you 10 years. It's very dangerous. And the move for them is going to be setting up a way where they can attack people who are online, who are advocating for change.
I don't know, Garland, what your politics are, whether you belong to a political party, whether you're active or not. I don't know that much about you, but I know that you're politically aware. And in my view, this biggest problem that we have right now is with the great majority of Democratic voters who are oblivious to everything that you've been saying. That they are not going to watch a show that exposes the bad Uncle Sam. What was the old phrase from Graham Greene? The things that we do in South America, Central America, all of the horrible revolutions, and we impose dictators in order to extract resources, and then you have the World Bank and the IMF and everything that's just organized around the idea of depriving people of their sovereignty, of their rights as citizens of their country. And as you were saying before, instead of being a good neighbor, we come in and take advantage. You come in and that, to me, I mean, the mugger on the street that's a sociopath is nowhere near the danger of the banker that's a sociopath that's going to use his power to take down not just a little old lady, but an entire city or an entire country. And if there's resistance, then that's all she wrote for the resisting people, because the technological advantage now that the banks have and everything. I mean, you can't fight back anymore. And how can you fight back? But getting back to the idea of popular resistance, I enjoy. There is a big difference between Europe and America in terms of when people are going to go out on the streets, right? I mean, you probably have noticed that, the French in particular have always had a propensity to just go out on the streets in their millions and protest if the government does something that they don't like, and they have effect. I saw a YouTube of people marching in Denmark the other day, and then yesterday again in France. So just a whole huge march, people going down the street protesting the Macron's most recent restrictions. If you try to do that in the United States, what you just said is what's going to happen. We don't have enough of a tradition of popular resistance in this country. It's always divided. It's always like, well, these are the Black Lives Matter resistance. This is the some other resistance. I mean, I don't want to make it racial, but I think that we don't have a unified. I mean, if we had a Dr. King, if we had a Martin Luther King that could say, let's walk hand in hand up to the Capitol and force our legislator to do what's the right thing, that would be great. But we don't. If a Donald Trump says, let's walk to the Capitol and force the legislature to do the right thing, then, that's bad. He's not going to, and the people that followed him are some of them are looking at getting prosecuted. This popular tradition of people just saying no, just getting out on the streets and marching to drums and having chants and things just doesn't happen here. What do you think about that? Do you think there's any chance that we can organize popular resistance, or are we just going to be unable to do anything as a unified popular culture?
Well, it's interesting. I think that some things are going to happen, but it may get ugly before it all goes down. If you look at the a few years ago when we had the 2003 invasion of Iraq, and I went to Washington, D.C., and there were unbelievable protests. The protests were unbelievable, and they certainly just absolutely ignored and paid no attention to them. I think that there's going to there are going to be some changes here in the next couple years. And, what happens is people try to make the changes. They try to force them. They try to create change. They're like, let's all get together and let's do this. And then that's going to change it. Right. I don't think that's really the way it's going to work in the United States, because one of the reasons is our leaders are so good at dividing people. They divide people by race, religion, so-called party or what have you. And what we don't recognize is that we're on the same boat, like economically, people who are either laid off or working, just making it, or working doing okay, whatever the case, but we're all facing the same economic outcome in the long run. If they continue doing this, they're just going to, the dollar's going to crash. They're going to collapse our economy. They're in the process of doing it right now. One could certainly make the argument that as much money as our government has to pump into the stock market to keep it alive, that the fact that our government now is the lender of last resort for all corporations, that we are now state capitalism, as Vladimir Lenin called it, state capitalism. And right now, our government buys the bonds for corporations. So one could argue that our economic system has already collapsed, but that it's being floated. So ultimately, I think, and part of this domestic terrorism stuff, they know things are going bad. They're going to get worse. The dollar's on its way down. And they feel like, how do we maintain our power when we have no legitimacy left? Because that's it. The elite ruling class does not have legitimacy anymore with most people. But I think one of the issues that we have now, and I'll be honest with you, I hope Donald Trump has talked about starting a patriot party. Now, but my politics is I'm a left-leaning person. I'm left. I was a Bernie supporter, et cetera, right? I'm a left-leaning person. However, my ideology is what it is. But here's the way I look at it. But my moral compass stays the same. I believe in certain things, and I don't care who's in power. I don't care who the president is. I don't care who's in Congress. I believe in those things. And what they've been able to do, the separation they've been able to do, is create these, now I just call them these two brainwash cults, where if an allegation is made, you don't look at the allegation based on the merits of the allegation. You look at the allegation based on who it came from and who it's made against. So if you're a member of the blue cult and an allegation is made from a Republican and it's against the Democrat, you already know that you oppose it and you're going to argue against it and you're going to fight against it because this is my team and we fight against it. If you're a Republican and somebody who's not a Republican particularly a Democrat, makes an allegation against one of a person in your party, in your tribe, as it were, you already know your position. You know this, there are so many people that they can say, I'm MAGA, I'm blue, I'm red, I'm whatever, and they can tell you what group they're in. And from that point on, you can tell every one of their positions on everything. If an allegation is made, you don't even have to talk to them. You already know. Well, you're a Republican. Yeah. Well, somebody said this about China. Oh, you're a Democrat. Somebody said this about Russia. Well, I already know what you think. You don't have to think. You're not even a person anymore. You are just another expression of that party. Right. So you already know if I can say, well, here's an issue. And I already know that OLoughlin's position is going to be this because he's a member of this party or this group or whatever. You're not even a person. You're just another expression of that party, and an insignificant expression of that party. So the way I look at it is you have to separate yourself. A quick example. All right, I'm on the left. I was a Bernie guy, didn't vote for Trump. So when the whole Russiagate thing started, right? I didn't say, well, I hate Trump, therefore it's got to be true. I said, let me look at it based on the merits of the argument. Let me research what people are saying. As I researched it, as I looked at the merits of the argument, I said, they're very weak and flawed. I don't see anything here. And I continued to watch it. And eventually, as I followed it even more, I realized that the investigation against Trump, the Crossfire Hurricane, all of that was extremely corrupt. It was it was a criminal operation to do a coup against Donald Trump, a preemptive coup to stop him from becoming president. And then once he became president, they were trying to coup him. They're trying to throw the president out. Now, I didn't agree with that president. I didn't agree with his policies. But that doesn't mean that when I investigate what's going on, that's going to color my investigation. That's what we don't get anymore. You can't find someone who says, I'm a Democrat, but let me look at that. No, that was an illegal coup against Donald Trump. You can't do that because your positions have been decided by which cult you are in. That's why I hope Donald Trump starts a Patriot Party and draws some people out of the Republican Party, because I do believe that when one party has an exodus, the other party will too. That there will be people in the other party that'll see that and say, all right, let's start the American Labor Party, whatever. I think will be much healthier if we can clean these two brainwashed cults out so that people won't be caught up in a cult that preaches whatever the dogma is, and you have to believe it because you're a member of that particular cult.
Yeah, well said, and it's a good model for the disaster that we've come to, because this has all been designed. We've been psychologically manipulated, and like it comes right down to the Facebook feed. You know, a person who's known as a liberal is not going to see the same material hitting their eyes every morning that to somebody who's known as a conservative is. And that's, you know, manipulating our minds on a great scale, on a national and international scale, to keep us divided. So that when, you know, if you are a leftist, then most likely your idea of Donald Trump is that he is a misogynistic buffoon. And if you are a rightist, your basic idea of Joe Biden is that he is a zombie with very little mental capacity left. But vice versa, on the presentation that you get as a conservative of Donald Trump is a very well-spoken man who is highly patriotic and can deal with difficult questions and has he's got all his marbles. On the left, you see Joe Biden walking, talking, chewing gum, and looking like, he can do it. He might be old, but he can do it. Those are diametrically different pictures of the leadership that we get, mainly from the press and from social media. That all of that seems to be engineered to fight against us doing what you suggest, and that is to step back from red versus blue and to become a nation of reasonable people that have common sense again. When I used to talk to juries, one of my favorite experts was called Dr. Common Sense. And I would say, listen to Dr. Common Sense here. He's in the room too. And what does he tell you? Well, they're taking that away from us. The common sense means that we all kind of understand things, together. We all kind of understand that water is wet and that, the sky is going to rain or whatever. We have these common understandings, but they peel it away so that, we no longer have a common basis of understanding that we can sit down as a jury and decide whether, according to our community conscience, our common sense, that somebody is guilty or was injured and deserving of compensation. I was a Bernie brother too, and I think there's a lot of us that are fall in that category, that we got weeded out of the Democratic Party because we saw what happened to Bernie. And I don't know if Bernie at this point, I think he's completely out of it. I think this whole mittens thing has been just kind of a send off for Bernie to say goodbye, Bernie. You're off. You're no longer on the playing field. We're going to give you a cute little send off gift and make you famous for mittens. But I don't think he'll be back, and I think that's a symbolic of the progressive agenda is not going to be back. These corporate Democrats have got the power now, and all of the good hearts that are on the left are not going to see anything good happen. I'm everywhere that they can, they're pressing the Soviets. They're pressing up in the Belarusia. They're pressing in Ukraine. I really fear for Ukraine right now. When you think about how far they went, that Giuliani went over there. They got the President Zelenka on their side. They had, all kinds of indictable stuff against Joe Biden himself, as well as Hunter Biden. All of that stuff was built up based upon the present government, but the opposing government is the one with Kolomoisky and the bad guys that are going to come in and take it over with the help of who? Of NATO, of our very own tax dollars, training and helping these people that in many cases are mercenaries with a history of going back to the Ukrainian Nazi collaborator armies. And they're terrible. I mean, they're these blood and soil people. But in order to aggravate and weaken Putin and the Soviet Union, I think that it looks to me like the United States will be pushing for a war in Ukraine, and who knows what they're going to do. Yemen, they've sent more troops into Yemen, and this is a very militaristic agenda that I don't think Donald Trump had. I think Donald Trump really did not want to start a bunch of wars and enrich a bunch of arms makers. And that is more of a progressive agenda than it is a right-wing agenda. If people could just see that, could see that, yeah, maybe you don't like orange hair, or maybe you don't like him because he's a sexist, or because of, the things that you heard that he said. And, there's 1,000 reasons not to like him. But look at his policies. Look at what he did. Look at what he was doing to preserve and restore American industry so we'd have a real production base. That's not going to happen under Biden. We're going to keep losing our means to employ people. Whether you're for or against the Keystone Pipeline, it provided a lot of jobs. And while on the one hand, he can say, well, we're strengthening unions, but on the other hand, where's the unions going to work if all of our industries are gone overseas? And it sure does look like we had a lot of resurgence of American jobs, American industry, American internal value. And now that internal value is going to be shipped out of the country again, and the speculators are going to be the ones that make the money and not the ones that invest in actual working capital, plants and workers and technology. That stuff is all going to the big guys that are going to use it to make more money by exploiting people in third world. I keep saying third world, but countries where there's a much lower wage scale, and simple as that.
A couple of things there. Number one, I think, and this is critical, and I think you're getting past, and I'm getting past it. But as we, had discussed, the poor old brainwashed cults, the red and blue cults, can't get past that, and that is we need to get people accustomed to focusing on policies as opposed to personalities. In America, what do they push? The policies of personality. This person's nice. This person's mean. This person a racist. This person's whatever, right? So they get you into this personal thing, and you are looking at this politician, but you do not recognize, look, Bill Clinton was there. Who was running the money when he was there? A bunch of Goldman Sachs, Citibank, et cetera, people. In comes George Bush, same people. In comes Obama, same people. In comes Trump. You know what I mean? So, the warmongering, all the things that happen oftentimes are very, very consistent. And when we get focused on the individual, we don't talk policy. Now, Donald Trump, a person I got a lot of issues with with a lot of his policies. But if we talk a foreign policy for just a minute, again, I'm an anti-war, anti-empire person. I'm a person, I align a lot with oftentimes libertarians when it comes to foreign policy, but there are some areas that I don't. But here's what I believe. A country, a nation should focus on taking care of its citizens, acting in the best interest of its citizens internally, and that we should respect the sovereignty of other nations. And if another nation wants to have whatever kind, if they want a democracy, if they want a parliamentary system, if they want communism, social, I don't care what it is. That's their country. And if it works for them, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine. And if they want to do business with us, we do business with them. If we can find financial agreements with whatever country and it works to our best interest, we should do it. If it doesn't, we don't. But this business about we're going around the world. Well, that person wants a such and such government and we don't think they should have it. Or that government over there, they've got this person in charge. I disagree with that. And that is you got the politics of empire, number one. An empire, we're like the Roman Empire. We are not a nation. People are mistaken if they think that the United States is a nation. We are not a nation. We are an empire. Nations don't have 1,000 bases around the world. Empires do. Nations do not overthrow the governments of other countries and steal their resources. That's what nations do. Empires do that. People don't understand our problems because they try to view this country as a nation. And that ain't what it is. People say, well, how come we can't afford health care? How come we can't do this or that for our people? Nations can do that. They're like, well, Germany, Canada does it. Why they're taking care of their people in the pandemic. They're nations. We ain't a nation. We're an empire. An empire it's so expensive to maintain an empire that you can't do the things that you need to do internally. And so what happens with an empire protecting itself, we look externally. If somebody is a threat to our power, we're going to neutralize the threat. The thing about it is now that Americans have to realize is that's what's going on now. The empire is looking inward saying, wait a minute, there's a pandemic, there's economic strife, and people here are saying, we need help. We need money. People are asking questions like, why are you spending all this money on military when we're hungry? We may see that as a legitimate question. The people who run our country see that as a threat to what they're trying to do. We are now threatening them. That money has to go to them and their friends and their cronies and whoever around the world and buying all the stuff that they buy for war and empire and overthrowing countries and all of that stuff. And we're threatening that, saying, hey, what about us? They're not thinking, well, what about our citizens? They are suffering. No, they're thinking, oh no, there is now an internal threat to this machine. And Avril Haines, who is the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, she's been saying it. She said, well, the war on terrorism had to focus on ISIS before, but not anymore. We've now got to focus internally. Why? They see a threat. We're asking too many questions about finances, questions that we have a right to ask. But in an empire, you don't have that right. So now it is basically all they're trying to do is neutralize an internal threat to this massive globalist machine. And it's not going to be easy. So they're going to have a fight internally now. And I think it's going to be like this. Well, before we can go out and do everything we need to do out in the world, and to make sure that we can do that, we got to put down this internal threat. And that's everything that's coming. And it's not going to be pretty. But the thing about it is, I think the good thing, the positive thing about it, if they don't get us nuked, That's if they don't get us nuked. And you hate to have to say, if they don't get us nuked, you never want to start a sentence with that. But unfortunately, I have. If they don't get us nuked, then I believe that the American people will push back. I believe that the American people will get angry enough. Hopefully, they don't turn on each other, as we're saying. Hopefully, they're not such brainwashed cults that they turn on each other. I think if people were still totally entrenched in both parties, that would be a problem of them turning on each other. But so many people are leaving these two corrupt parties. Thankfully, the people like you and I recognize what the Democratic Party was and left it. People, Donald Trump, for all of his issues, he wanted to run a country. He didn't want to run an empire. He thought he was running a country, and he acted like it was a country. And therefore, he had to go. He had to go. He couldn't stick around one way or the other. Donald Trump was not. I said this for a while. They made a decision. Donald Trump's not going to be president in January. And whatever they had to do, that's what was going to happen. But I feel like there are a lot of people out here. When I see you, when I see the people online, when I go on Twitter and I see people, pushing back, I feel good because as you know, I'll finish up by saying this, as you and I know, and as all of our listeners know, there are so many people online that just, hey, how you doing? Guess what? For every problem that happened, and you know the type, Putin, Russia did it, China did it. There's an enemy that's 10,000 miles away. Somewhere out there, there's an enemy. Our problems were caused by an enemy. It's not the ruling elite. It's not the ruling elite class that makes decisions that screws us. You ever notice? It's always Russia or China or somebody that just happens to be 10,000 miles away, and that we can enrich their cronies in the military industrial complex because we can say they're threatening us, and therefore we got to build more ships and subs.
Yeah. I'm very gratified by what you say. I think you're getting to the same conclusions that I have from your path. It says that we're both going in the right place, the right direction. I'm gratified that you recognize what I also see in President Trump, and that is an attitude of what the historically the Peace of Westphalia, at the end of the 30 Years' War, where in Europe there was a decision exactly to that from here on out, your king decides your religion and your king decides your religion, and the Protestants are over there and the Catholics are over there and the Baptists are down there, and they're all going to live in peace because they don't have those religious conflicts anymore. It's all decided. It's done. We're not going to interfere in each other's sovereign states. And if we could just get the United States to recognize that it is a sovereign state once again and not an empire, because the idea that it's an empire is simply an idea that's foisted upon us by the rich people that want to use our assets, our military, our tax dollars, our bodies, our lives to further enrich themselves and grab more and more of the planet. My reflections on President Trump bring me back to President Kennedy to say, well, that was exactly, if you remember President Kennedy's inaugural address, where he said, we are going to be here to be a mentor, to be a support, but we're not going to run your countries. All of these former colonial countries, to Ghana, to the Congo, to everywhere, that the colonial era is over. We are going to help you. We'll give you technology. We'll give you teachers. We'll send you, our Peace Corps. But we are not going to run your country. And that was the end of John F. Kennedy, because the agenda of the CIA, and the CIA simply works for these elite banks and corporations like the Rockefellers, as everybody probably recognizes. That's the fundamental idea of my show, is that the CIA has never been working for the American people and has always been working for the elites of Wall Street and their banking partners around the world. So when we try to recognize that there's a difference between what America is supposed to be according to the Constitution and what America is since the assassination of Kennedy, or wherever you want to start. You want to start with 9/11, or you want to start with the creation of the Federal Reserve, or you want to start with, the 1871 or the 1876 Hayes-Tilden election. There's a lot of places where we can say, here's where the empire took over and we lost our republic. And my whole thing is, people have to recognize that this is not the American people going out there taking down all of these sovereign countries. It is the intelligence agencies working not for our interest, but to enhance the interest of the banks. And to put one more thought on top of that is that I've been working a good bit with Harley Schlanger of the LaRouche organization to understand, what's going on, because they have this incredible depth of watching this for the past 40 years. And what Harley Schlanger was saying on that point has just left my mind for some reason. What was I going to say? It was the Davos people, the ones that are running the World Economic Forum, okay? The reason that they have to do this is because they have collectively spent all the money that they have, and they all owe each other payments on various loans. So that this rich bank owes that rich bank a bunch of money, and they've run out of money. There's no cash, there's no extra money in the system. So that's why they have to do things like extract money for this, this COVID thing, which, hey, that's a Christmas tree with an awful lot of ornaments on it for various special interests. Always, you get your $600 and they get their $6 billion. And that kind of overspending of the American people's we'll never be able to pay that much money back. These $20-30 trillion that they keep piling on us as debt. That's where the answer is that we owe so much money that the banks control us. And if anytime they want to, they can crash that dollar, that very, very weak dollar that we have right now. And it's only because we do what they want us to do. We send our boys over to take down countries for the banks. If we weren't doing that for them, there'd be no reason for them to keep extending loans to us. I mean, who would you lend? How much money would you lend to somebody that's in debt already $23 trillion? I wouldn't lend them a dime. Why do they keep doing it? Because we do their bidding, not because we are a good credit risk.
Well, and let me add this. If you look at what happened in the U.S., right, when, the term you can use, neoliberalism, globalism, whatever term, there was a time when people could make enough money, one man could make enough money to feed his family, right, with a high school education, or without. He could go get a job, he could feed his family, right? And then things changed to the point where the wife had to go to work. Now the kids, they're working. Now everybody's working, and they still can't pay. So what do they do? What did they do next? If you go back to like the 60s, early 70s, the only people that really had credit cards were like traveling salesmen or people who needed them from work, right? So what do? Now that people can't buy the things they need, they give everybody a credit card. So now it's like everybody can go into debt. Then they're like, hey, you got a house. So what happens? People buy a house. Eventually they pass away. Their kids get the house. They leave an estate to the kids in a house, so the kids can, have some opportunity to move forward and live a better life. Well, now we're going to do reverse mortgages so that you can take the money out of the house while you're still alive, and then when you die, the bank takes it, right? Why? But people had to do reverse mortgages. Why? Because they couldn't afford to live. You had seniors that couldn't afford to live anymore. So they created an economy where the average person couldn't afford to live, and then they just gave us more. Then, well, we'll lend you more money. We'll turn your house into an ATM. We'll do whatever we can to artificially put more money in. So this debt bubble that they've created for corporations, they've created for people, they've created for governments, it's just blowing up. And the fact of the matter is, the economic system that we have that could care less about anything past the next quarter didn't even worry about it. It was, nobody said, hey, what's going to happen in the long run? They just said, hey, if we do this, we can make more in the next quarter. Or if we do that, then to me, the biggest cash cow, the real one that they got was student loans. Now everybody wants to go to college, do you? So now we don't have to wait till you're 35 to sell you a house. Now, when you get out of college at 23, 24, 25, you already got a house payment, but no house. So that's the best thing that ever happened to the bank. So now everybody that graduates from college, or most people, they owe the banks a fortune when they get out of college, just more debt. So they've saddled people in debt. And now, who's getting hit the hardest from the pandemic? Who works in a lot of the jobs, restaurants, hotels, things like that? A lot of young people. They're infuriating the young people. I have a lot of faith in the young people. I think they're angry, and I think they'll push back. Just people have a lot to learn. People are getting caught up in who to support, not what policies to support. It's about this person or that person. And I think in politics, here's what I do. I have a group of policies that I support. If I can find a politician that aligns with those policies, then I would support that politician. Not kind of hard right now, to be quite honest. But if I don't, then I'm not. And I have certain things that are deal breakers. That's the other part. That's what they don't want to. That's the interesting thing. I'll end up with this. Our political leadership in the elite ruling class, what they don't want you to have is a deal breaker. They don't want you to have something where you say, I will support this policy, this politician or this party, but they're deal breakers. Look, we everywhere. Some guy's going out and he wants to meet a wife. He meets a woman, she's beautiful, everything he wants, whatever he wants is there. And he's like, hey, she's great, she's wonderful. Oh, she's everything I want. I think I'll marry her. Is there anything I need to know about you? And she says, well, I'm a hatchet killer. I'm a hatchet murderer, a serial killer. And he's like, yeah, I think that's a deal breaker, right? You got to have deal breakers. You can't just say, well, okay, hey, we can get by that. No, you're going to get an axe in your stinking head within a week. So in politics, they want us to say, when I look at the Democratic Party and I'm like, oh my God, they're warmongers, they're this, they're that. They want to like, well, but look at Trump or the other side. No. First of all, there ain't another side. There is one side. They're pretending that there's two sides. But the other thing is, if you are a politician or a party and you want my vote, I have a right to say, I'll vote for you as long as you don't go over here. That's the hatchet murderer right there. That's the deal breaker, right? And people don't have them anymore. And so they just accept anything from a party and they do the comparisons. Well, my particular candidate is pretty crappy, but the other guy's worse. And you get caught in that one. Instead of saying, I'm not going to support bad parties or bad politicians that disagree. And I don't mean bad as they're a bad person. I'll vote for somebody that I can't stand. I will vote for a politician that's the worst scumbag in the world if their policies align with mine. That's why I say that Donald Trump, I didn't vote for Trump. If my policies aligned with Trump, he's a bit of a jerk. Yeah, he's a bit of an a-hole, philanderer, all these things, right? But if his policies aligned with mine, I'd be fine with that. I'm not trying to marry Donald Trump. I'm not trying to move him into my house like a best friend. And when I look at him and Biden, there are some areas God forbid, I'd probably choose Biden. But foreign policy ain't one of them. And again, I don't like Donald Trump's foreign policy at all. But when I look at the two foreign policies, Joe Biden's Trump's is frightening. Joe Biden's is horrifying. That's the way I see him. And, but the system wants to tell us, oh, we should be happy now that Trump's gone. I ain't happy. I don't have anything to celebrate. Now, when I got to take out a shovel and start digging a nuclear shelter in my backyard, I'm not dancing a jig, running up and down the street here on Hartwell Road where I live.
Yeah. A lot in that. I don't know if we're really facing the idea of a nuclear war hitting here so much as we are seeing war breaking out overseas, and that's the other part of what the two-party system does is it tends to divorce us from any responsibility as citizens to look at foreign policy. This election was basically based upon, do you like Donald Trump or not? And that's a personality question. It's not about policy. But if you look at Biden now, people don't vote for Biden because they like his foreign policy. They vote for him, I think, because they have democratic values. They think that possibly they'll get some progressive something out of it, maybe something good out of it, which they know they will not get any good out of Donald Trump. So that's simple as that. Just vote for him. But generally, over the past my lifetime, it seems that my voice in American foreign policy is completely worthless. I remember being in college and suddenly we're bombing Cambodia, and I'm so, what? Why are we bombing Cambodia? Who said we decided to do that? But there it is, the bombs falling on the front page of the Washington Post while I'm looking at the newspaper, and I was horrified. I said, we didn't declare war on Cambodia. What's going on here? Well, what's going on here is that the CIA and their allies are running the foreign policy of this country, and we've kind of let them do it. We farmed it out, and now they're doing it in spades, and they're going to. I don't know. I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but one of the good things about Trump was he did not start these wars that are going on. That are. I'm just afraid we're going to. The people behind Trump are tired of not being at war. They want to spin down the inventory of their missiles and their rockets and their warplanes, and it's very depressing to think about it. So let's change the subject. What about voter fraud? Let's take a few minutes and think about that, because most of the people that went to the mall on January 6th were there because they had been convinced, or at least very suspicious, that the election was fraudulent, that there was all this ballot dumping at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in Michigan and Pennsylvania, and other stories like that they wanted to have sorted out, in a public hearing, that people could see the evidence and decide for themselves. And that wasn't going to happen. It didn't happen because of what happened at the Capitol. It just didn't happen. Like somebody that didn't want it to happen turned over the game, said, upset the chess game so we don't have to see the ending. Well, that preemption of that type of exposition of what may or may not have been voter fraud, we probably will never know, could all be made so much better if we got rid of these Dominion voting machines and went back to something much simpler, like paper ballots. And until we get these computers out of our voting system, we're never going to be able to rely on the outcome of an election, where they can use sophisticated algorithms to just shade it just enough to make their candidate win without it being totally obvious. And so that, I think, has probably happened in the past, probably happened this time, but I can't prove it. The idea of attacking the Dominion voting system and the idea of these, from Diebold to now, it's got to be more transparent. We've got to get back to having traditional American voting with the different parties coming and watching vote, judges and fairness and local supervision, so that the local people know whether their vote was counted or not. How do you feel about that, making a legislative effort to restore paper ballots, for instance?
I'm 100% for it. So a couple of things I'll say about the voting, and that is, we have like literally thousands of different voting systems in the U.S. Like every different county in a state can have a different method of voting. So there's no way in the world you can have a voting system with thousands of different ways of voting, manners and methods of voting, and rules around the voting, that you're going to have any kind of consistency whatsoever. And you're going to have people in one jurisdiction that are extremely competent and want to do things right, and you're going to have people in another and that are well funded. Then you're going to have some in another jurisdiction that aren't well funded, that don't really care about it, that maybe have that they're up to no good. So there's no way of really ensuring any consistency in voting. But where I really believe, I'm with you, where I think the people who were like, yeah, somebody, or there was a bunch of ballots hidden in in a box somewhere, I think they're missing the boat. I really believe, and I have this for a long time, that our voting system is manipulated with voting machines. That's where they manipulate it. That's where it's easy to manipulate. When the voting machines first came out, right here in Baltimore, and John Hopkins did a study to show how easy it was to hack the machines. Like a 12-year-old girl hacked the machines, right? We also know there's proprietary software, so we can't really know what's going on in those machines. So we have a system where we have voting machines that are easily hackable, and there's no way for us as citizens to know if they were hacked or changed. Here's the bottom line: they don't even have to hack them. They don't have to write some funny software from some other country. No, right in front of our faces, there is no way for us to verify anything. It doesn't get any easier than that. And we're supposed to believe that the intelligence agencies in our country have the ability to hack the machines to change the votes, but they're not going to do it. We're supposed to believe that. And this is important. It's something, a lot of people may not know the name Kevin Kleinsmith. If you don't know the name Kevin Kleinsmith, you should look it up. Kevin Kleinsmith, and I'm going somewhere with this. Kevin Kleinsmith was an FBI lawyer doing the Crossfire Hurricane investigation of Donald Trump, which was a criminal coup attempt and operation. And during that time, one of the emails, they were trying to get a FISA warrant for Carter Page. So they got an email from the CIA that said, look, Carter Page worked with us and he gave us some information. We were doing an investigation on a spy. Carter Page gave us information. He worked with us. Right. So they were trying to go to the FISA court and convince the judge that Carter Page was working with the Russians doing whatever. Right. They get an email from the CIA that says, nah, he worked with us. So now they're not going to be able to go to a FISA court and say this guy who the CIA back stood for, and they said he helped them on a spy case, we want a warrant on him. They ain't going to get their warrant. Kevin Kleinsmith is an FBI lawyer. He takes the email that says Carter Page worked with us, and he changes it to Carter Page did not work with us. He deliberately lied. He changed the email to say the opposite. And then he went to Andrew McCabe, who was assistant director of the FBI. McCabe signed it, and they went to a FISA court and they got the warrant. But they didn't do it just one. So every 3-4 months, 6 months, whatever it was, they needed to renew the warrant. They went back and they deliberately, with malice and a forethought, lied to and misled the court going after Donald Trump. Here's what's important about that. Kevin Kleinsmith just went to court and he faced the judge. And now keep in mind something. You have deliberately lied to a court. You have misled a court. You have signed your name to a document under penalty of perjury, that what you were submitting to the court was true when you had changed it, and it was a deliberate lie, right? They gave Kevin Kleinsmith 12 months probation and a $100 fine. That's what Kevin Kleinsmith got. That's what and that was for an attempted coup of the president of the United States. So it's like you and I are talking about. The intelligence community, they know if you can do that. Look, John Brennan lied to Congress. Congress was investigating the CIA under John Brennan for torture. At the time the Senate Intelligence Committee was investigating the CIA under John Brennan, the CIA then hacked into the Senate Intelligence Committee's computers while they were doing it. John Brennan swore they wouldn't. When the Senate Intelligence Committee found out that they had been hacked by the CIA, they went to John Brennan and they allowed John Brennan to do the investigation of his own CIA people. And he ordered the hack. So the bottom line is this: our intelligence community can do anything they want. They already know it. They own the members of Congress. They've got compromising information on every single one of them. And so the bottom line is, would they hack the machines? Would they change the machines? Of course they would, because if they get caught, they already know nothing's going to happen to them. They own this. This is a national or international security state-run nation, and it ain't getting better.
Garland Nixon, you can have the last word right there, because that's exactly the way I feel about it. And only thing we can do is expose it. I mean, I'm so delighted to have made this connection with you, because your analysis is crisp and clear and easy to understand. And I delighted to share it with my listeners. And I wish you very, very great luck and success with your YouTube channel.
Could I ask everyone to follow me on Twitter? Follow me on Twitter at Garland Nixon and on YouTube. And I also have a Telegram channel now, Garland Nixon. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
A Telegram channel? What's that? I don't know that.
A Telegram, it's kind of like WhatsApp. Everybody's going to Telegram. It's an application you can have on your phone or your computer, and you can contact people on it, and it's secure. But you can also have a channel on Telegram. I heard, I don't know if Donald Trump has one now. He may, but that's what a lot of people are migrating over there.
Okay, well, maybe you'll see me over there too. Thanks everyone for being with us, and Garland, we'll talk to you again soon. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Okay, good night. Good night, everyone.